What's going on, everybody? This is Mike from the Songwriter's Planner. Thanks for visiting me today on this podcast. Got a really great guest coming up, but before that, I just wanted to talk really quickly. This is the Songwriter's Planner. I am the creator and designer, and basically it's a tool that I put together to give productivity to musicians, singer-songwriters, kind of something that you don't see in the market. I think musicians and artists get overlooked in the productivity department, so if you get a chance, please check it out, www.songwritersplanner.com. See if this could be a useful tool for you. It has been for me. And so check that out. And getting back to today's episode, I'm really psyched about my guest today. It's a really good friend of mine. His name is Josh Rozenboom. He is a senior sound engineer over at SER Soundworks in Chandler, Arizona. This is a full-service recording studio as well as a rehearsal space. They have both things going on. So it's a really big facilities, and they run both rehearsal spaces for bands that they can rent hourly, as well as do full sound recording. And Josh and his family have been running this business for a couple years now, and they've been doing great. They've been servicing all of Arizona, and they just have a really great reputation. So I thought it would be great to have Josh over or on this podcast to talk about a lot of the experiences that he's had in working with bands, from the rehearsal space side to the recording side. He's also a great guitar player. I've jammed with him many times, and he's a killer guitar player. I love what he does. So with all these things involved that Josh does, I thought it'd be really great to have him on and share a lot of the knowledge that he has when he works with bands, when he writes his own music or plays his own music, and just a lot of things that covers a big umbrella that musicians deal with during their careers. So that's my guest today. I really hope you get a lot of value out of this. I know that talking with Josh is always a great time, so I'm really looking forward to it. All right, let's jump into it right now. Peace. I got my buddy Josh here on the line. I just gave him a call. So thank you again, Josh, for being on the podcast. I got you live now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So like I was telling my audiences, the reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast is because, in my opinion, you've kind of always wore many hats when it comes to dealing with musicians, and you're a musician obviously, but you're business owner with your family. You guys run the full gamut of recording studio, rehearsal space. I mean, that's a lot going on. Yeah. So why don't we just start real quick, and then maybe just give us some background on, how things started for you musically, and then how it kind of rolled into, with the recording studio, the rehearsal space, and so forth.
Sure, man. I started playing guitar in high school like most people did because it looked cool.
Yeah.
I grew up around music. I grew up in a musical household, and there were always people playing instruments around me. So I always had access to them, and I could pick them up and play.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't really apply myself to it until I got into school, like high school.
Okay.
And so, I started playing guitar then. I've been playing guitar since. And then after high school, I went to the military, and there's not a whole lot of options, as far as kind of getting in bands and writing songs and stuff in that situation. But they did have practice rooms, and we could go. It was free for us, the service members. We could go and just rent the room and hang out. And if you found some guys that played instruments, then we could all go and see who played what and play cover songs and stuff. So
that's pretty cool.
Kept going.
I didn't.
Yeah, it was fun.
I didn't know that obviously there's a lot of musicians that go into the military, and it's not like you're going to stop playing. So that's kind of cool. You got to connect with other musicians out there.
Yeah, it was awesome. And with everybody being from somewhere else, any sort of little connection that you have with somebody, you just kind of latch onto, and it's like, you play guitar, I play guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, you play drums? Yeah. And I met some, like, in some of them were guys that just plucked on acoustic guitars and learned songs off the radio.
Uh-huh.
And some guys were like really studs, and there's a guy that lived down the hall from me that could play keyboard. He played keyboards, and he just wrote some amazing stuff, like Earth, Wind, and Fire type stuff.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Blew me away. Yeah, he was super cool.
Cool.
So I did that, but then once I got out of the Army, I actually started playing in bands and writing songs and doing that whole thing. And coming in contact with that situation, I came into contact with guys that were recording music, and it was the first time, for some reason, it registered with me. You could actually do that as a job. So I'm like, you guys are awesome. Yeah. So,
When you first experienced the recording process, is kind of something clicked in your head? Is it something like you just connected to?
yeah, totally. That was something that I wanted to know more about.
Okay.
Even watching guys running sound at shows, I was very much drawn to that for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just, I can't even explain why. I just thought it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of figured, I knew I wanted to do that. I didn't have a whole lot of avenues for getting into it where I lived. I lived in Texas, in a pretty rural area.
Mm-hmm.
But I got in touch with my dad out here, and at the time I was going to like a music business school in Austin, which ironically, like Austin Community College doesn't have a recording program. They
Wow.
just have, it was weird. But I wanted to get into the business aspect of music somehow. I didn't want to just be a player all my life or like be in bands. And the kind of band I played in like indie rock bands where you were pretty much resigned to this life of eating Taco Bell every day and living in a van.
I'm familiar with that lifestyle. Yes.
Right. You know it, man. So that wasn't sustainable for me.
Yeah. I
wanted to get into the business side of it and know more. So that's what I did. But yeah, so my dad lives here, and he says, he's a music lover. He's grew up around. He's been around it all his life, and he wanted to open. He had the rehearsal studio idea, the hourly rehearsal rooms. That hadn't even crossed my mind.
Okay. So he already had the rehearsal studio business running then.
No, he didn't. Not yet.
Okay.
When I got in touch with him about this, he said it was a small world kind of thing. He's like, I said, well, I'm really wanting to get into recording music and working in studios.
Yeah.
He's like, I've had this idea kicking around for a long time about opening a hourly rehearsal studio. Like, well, maybe we can do both at the same time. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool because it's not like anybody can just do it. Obviously, you guys did a lot of research. I mean, you gotta find a location for that, and you're doing something that there's not many people in Arizona do, and probably where you folks on the podcast are listening or seeing. I mean, we're talking about a full service recording studio and a rehearsal space for bands. Hourly. I mean, how'd you guys find the location to do that?
We looked all over. Really, we just wanted a big space. And when we were searching for it, we looked at a bunch of different buildings, and we looked at some that kind of, you could have this vision. You could walk in and be like, oh, I have this vision of this place turning into something.
Yeah.
But there'd be something wrong with it. Like one of the cooler buildings that we found there was a company that made custom gas tanks this was back when like the chopper revolution was happening and everybody was building custom bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they did, but the building had flaws. So we just went with an empty shell, and it was brand new. So that was it. And we got that big empty space, and it's like, well, we'll just build what we need.
Wow.
And that's what we did.
That's amazing. So I've been to the studio, guys out there listening, and it is a big facility. I'm amazed that you guys built all that out. I mean, it's not easy to build a full recording studio, and everything. We're talking soundproof to the nines here for everything. So how'd you guys do all that? I mean, did you do it yourself? Did you hire contractors?
We did most of it ourselves. To get started, because there were things I didn't have a lot of experience with, I hired a guy that knew how to do framing. Mm-hmm. And he came in and he helped me learn how to do framing. And I hired somebody that knew how to do electrical, and he came in and he taught me how to do electrical work. And I hired somebody that knew how to do drywall. So I had friends, these people that I knew that had experience with these things we just learned how to do it. My dad's a very handy guy as well. So together, we put our heads together, and it was he and I, and then, if we could hire somebody else to help us work, we could rope whoever we could into it. But we did a lot of the construction ourselves. Mm-hmm. It was a big learning curve. Like our first 3 rehearsal rooms are all built differently, mainly just as an experiment. It's like, well, we know this is probably going to work out well, but let's try a couple different things and see what works the best. Mm-hmm. And we just learned as we went.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying we just learned as we went.
Yeah. How long did it take you guys from finding the facilities to getting up and running to where you're, booking bands for time to come in and rehearse, and then, getting people in to record? Like, how long was that process?
Oh, dude, we did it in like 3 months.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
We hauled ass. Wow. It was like 15-hour days, 7 days a week of just back there. And this was in the summer. It was like April into May, you know. It was hot.
Yeah, for all you people out there, Arizona summers can be killer. So I'm impressed that you guys did that, like going into the summer.
Yeah, we just hauled ass, man. It was a big tour for me. I'd been in college for a couple of years, and like once I got out of the Army, I sort of had an easy life, just playing music and working like in restaurants. So it was a big push for me to get in there, but that's what we did. We needed to, you know. It's like, hey, we got a lease payment, and we need to start getting people in here to offset that.
Yep, no doubt. I mean, you're starting a business like that, so you gotta get up and running as quick as possible. Let's jump into working with, now that you guys were all set up and everything. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, working with bands in town, and what are some of the challenges that you see as an engineer bands that want to come in and record. What kind of challenges do you see with working with these bands? Because Josh works with a lot of Arizona bands, and a lot of, not even just Arizona, but a lot of national people come in to work with you folks. What are some of kind of like the biggest things that you see that come in that are challenging to you when they come in to, you know, record?
Preparation is the key, and sometimes that's on me as well, but preparation is really the key. I kind of go back and forth on thinking like, well, everybody should be well rehearsed and have their instruments in top shape and like have their songs worked out and et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is not everybody does that. So I guess, probably the hardest thing is getting to know them in a very short amount of time and figuring out what I have to work with and how we can make the most of it.
Right. So do you find that the majority of the bands that come in to record, are they well rehearsed, or is there a certain time where they don't have everything down? So what's the majority that you see?
Well, I think probably more that they think they're well rehearsed and they're not.
Right.
And this is not to disparage anybody. The fact is, not everybody practices 3-4 days a week, and like, because I have bands that show up, and even on their first or second projects, and they rehearse several times a week, and 2-3 hours a night, and they actually talk with each other about how their songs should go, and you know what kind of input each person can put in creatively, and then it shows. Not everybody's like that, but man, it shows. Even the bands that may not be the most technically proficient players, preparation makes such a huge difference for them in the studio.
And that's a good point, because, you know, and I'm guilty of this, man. Like this idea where you're in a band and you're playing these great shows, and, you know, you're just awesome live, and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to go in and record a couple songs, you know, and you just basically take your live show and you try to bring it into the studio. I know a lot of bands make that mistake. They have this feeling like, oh yeah, well, we're great live. You know, what do we need to practice? I mean, do you find that happening out there?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's a different world. You know, you're under a microscope in the studio, and I like to try and catch that live feel, but you can get away with so much crap live, you know.
Yeah.
You know the times when you walk away thinking, oh man, I screwed that up, and then you look back at a video or something, you're like, okay, it wasn't that bad, but you can't get away with that stuff in the studio.
Yep. I'm guilty of doing that many times.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I'd say preparation's the key, and, you know, that's for me too. I try to talk with bands ahead of time, and if I can get them to a rehearsal and see them and sort of go, okay, this is what they're going for, maybe, or get kind of a feel for what they want to do and how they play, and I can start thinking ahead and have a game plan before they walk in the door.
Yeah. Let me step back first and talk about your passion for recording. So when you decided this is something I want to do, in your mind, how long did it take for you to go from, oh wow, this is something I want to do, to the point where you felt like, yes, I am comfortable with sitting behind the console, calling the shots, you know, doing everything. I'm comfortable with doing that. You know, how long did that process take? Because a lot of musicians out there who may listen to this are thinking about, wow, I want to get into recording too, you know, but I don't have the confidence, or I don't have the skill level yet. What was your personal journey to go from point A to point B?
When I first started, I felt really behind, and I was a little bit older than maybe some people might. You know, I'd already had some life going on before I started this. I was associating with kids that were like 18, 19, 20 years old and starting out and feeling like, oh man, I have to catch up. So there was a little bit of a lack of confidence, but I dove into it. And I tend to do that whether I feel with anything, whether I'm scared of it or not. I tend to jump in with both feet if I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And sink or swim. So usually you can tread water. And so I felt like I kind of treaded water for a while. It was maybe within a couple of years what's nice if you just jump in and start doing it, you start to develop a workflow. And anything you do for a long period of time, you just start to become comfortable with it. And then all of a sudden you'll have this experience, like when we made that Whiskey 6 album, and, somebody who has had a whole career making big records comes in and he revolutionized the way I worked in like 3 days.
Right. Yeah.
Was very confident walking into that, thinking like, okay, at least I can help these guys. And, he comes in and goes, oh, you need to do this, and this. And it was a game changer for me. And I'm open to that. Yeah. And then a whole other level starts. And then I'm confident with that for a while. And then all of a sudden I start working with better bands, and the expectations, my expectations of myself grow, and the expectations of the bands coming in grow. And I think, and so that doubt starts to creep in a little more, and then it's time to learn some new stuff and think, okay, how can I make this better, and what do I need to improve on? So,
do you think that it's a good lesson, for engineers or guys who are just starting out to have an open mind about learning, because there's always a bigger fish, right? There's always somebody that's going to come in and show you something that you don't know, no matter what you're doing. If you're doing sound engineering, if you're doing recording, if you're doing, it doesn't matter, drumming, it doesn't matter. Do you think it's a good mindset from the get-go to be like, just be an open book, absorb as much as you can from anyone who knows what they're doing, that kind of thing?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Those people are a valuable resource, and it never pays to be the smartest guy in the room.
That's good advice.
I try. Oh man, yeah. I'm a big fan of education and learning from whoever, and even people that are newer than you at something. Everybody's got something to offer that you may not have heard of. So even having, like, I have some interns that come in sometimes, and they're at home playing with this stuff, and they're maybe involved in a different world of recording than I am, generation. And I'll learn new things from them. I was talking to a guy came and saw me yesterday, and we were talking about, he participates in this online it's like an online education thing where you get to have access to these to mixes done, and you have these really high level professionals explaining mixes of these major label records they've done.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called Nail the Mix, and Joey Sturgis started it. It's really cool. And so they have a band like, these huge metal bands and pop punk bands and stuff. Those producers will come in and they'll sit down with the tracks, the multi-tracks, and they'll walk you through how they mixed a song.
Wow.
And it's awesome.
That's got to be like priceless to know, to get inside someone else's head and understand their process of it.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's great. And being more experienced, and I'm not on those guys' level by any means, but being more experienced and having things that I feel like I'm pretty good at and, I've sort of been doing for a while, I would look at that immediately and go, well, that's not for me. I could probably learn some stuff, but I don't really need to apply myself to that. But there's a different generation of people learning to record that are, this guy I saw yesterday, and he has gained so much from that type of thing. And so now I'm looking at it like, maybe there is something I can learn from this, It would be worth checking out.
That sounds like such a great opportunity, because there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of knowledge about things or recording techniques and all these theories and stuff, and just to be able to sit down and get insight into what they do, I mean, that's just got to excel your level of knowledge, exponentially, for sure.
Yeah, man. And I admire nowadays with the internet, with the way that content can be created and distributed so quickly now and so far spread, has really opened it up for people to learn recording more or less on their own. They can, the real plus side to it all, even watching like Nail the Mix, and there's the guy from Recording Revolution is awesome. So like willing to freely share information. There are a couple of really big producers now, and they make money. Some of it's like another income stream, but they also seem to genuinely enjoy sharing knowledge and saying, okay, guys, if you want to really do this, this is some stuff that I know. The catch out of all this is that none of it matters if you don't practice it and learn how to use it.
Right. And I think that, it's this new way of influential information sharing from professionals, especially in like the recording area, how they are very willing to share their secrets, whereas before it seems like maybe that wasn't the case. Like a lot of people had their ways of doing things and they were not telling anybody how to do it. It seems like it's kind of turned with the internet and the rise of influential or influencers, I guess you could say. Do you find that too?
I do. I agree. When I first started doing this, there was definitely like pro level information that you felt was a secret we were not privy to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether that was true or not, because that could have just been me being kind of isolated, whether that was true or not, those walls have come down since
right.
then.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from that is kind of like what I said, like, well, in the end, you can learn all the secrets you want. These guys can explain to you up and down every little thing they do. Mm-hmm. Some of it may be exactly what I would do in the studio, but they may get better results because they've been doing it 10 years longer than I have.
Mm-hmm.
They've made the mistakes, and it's just the experience. That's what I learned is like, well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad the information is available. Now, what do I do with it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Try it, see what works, and yeah. So I think it's funny for people that used to get all up in arms about trade secrets and, oh, these guys are not sharing techniques. And it's like, well, take them.
Yeah, yeah.
You can have it.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like that's been a major shift, a major flip in all industries, especially like recording, is that there's so much information and there's a lot of people that are willing to share. But you're right. The key is if you don't use these techniques and you just kind of, you just don't you don't apply them and put it to work, it doesn't matter whether you get it or not, Yeah.
Yeah. And I sort of wonder if it's this thing that's like, for so long, in the recording industry, this is something that at a professional level, most information was passed down from person to person. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to stick it out long enough and absorb knowledge, keep your mouth shut and absorb knowledge, then you would learn new things and you could actually become a skilled engineer, and that starts your career. So there are a lot of guys that hold on to that stuff because they actually fought really hard to get it. They said, well, man, I poured a lot of coffee and I mopped a lot of bathrooms and I kept my mouth shut and sat in hours and hours of sessions on holidays and weekends to get this that I know how to do. So that system's sort of broken down now. It doesn't work as much that way anymore now because the information is so free. I wonder if people say, well, we might as well just share. And like it's also a change in the business. Like there's a business and there's a market for people who are willing to pay for us to help educate them to do what we do. So there you go. We can adapt to that as well, and everybody gets a piece of the pie.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about kind of putting your knowledge out there and putting content out there that helps younger engineers, even here locally in town in Arizona where we live? Have you ever thought about maybe doing that, or is that something maybe down the line?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about it a lot. I think about it a lot. Mm-hmm. I've done a workshop or two here. It's something that I didn't get too far off the ground with, but it was a lot of fun, and it was very receptive. And I teach also. I teach in the recording program at Mesa Community College, so it's already something I do. Yeah. But I think it would be a lot of fun to be able to expand on that, and because I'm kind of limited a little bit by curriculum there, and I just teach one class on one subject on these days, and that's it. Yeah. So I think it'd be pretty cool to have a personal avenue for starting from the ground up and being able to help people out.
That's awesome, man. I you brought up a lot of good points there that I didn't really think about. Let's talk about home studios, because in this day and age, home studios are all the rage. I mean, it's just like everybody's got their own quote unquote studio in their home, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on the rise of these home studios and the pros and the cons? Like if you were talking to someone who was thinking about investing in some gear so they could set something up in their home, what would you say is pros and cons of that situation?
Well, first I would really want to know what their goal is. What are they looking to get out of the home studio? Because that sort of dictates what they should do. So if they want to, build a studio in their home and buy gear so they can do good quality recordings of their band or whatever, or their own music, then the pros are that they can work at home. The overhead, the upfront cost is greater, but over time the cost is there's almost none. It's just paying your electric bill.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so that's definitely a pro. That people being able to sort of nitpick their music and really put a lot of thought into what they're doing and just practice. That's a big plus.
Mm-hmm.
And there are guys like Steven Wilson, the producer Steven Wilson. Is a guy. He's one of those guys that like half of his records he's made in his bedroom in his parents' house.
Wow. Yeah.
Or that song "Go To It," someone I used to know. Like most of that song was put together in a shed in his parents' backyard. Him just sitting there for hours and hours playing with samples.
Right.
But there's pros to that. The cons, I think, are that you can get, the ability to have more tracks and inputs available to you at one time.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes not as helpful to have to wear both hats at the same time, to play, to be the writer / performer and the engineer and the producer. Some people are made for that and some people are not. I don't know if I'm one of those people. I'd much prefer to do one or the other. And also, if you go to a studio and you work with somebody like myself, or you work with an experienced engineer and somebody that has production knowledge, that person has arguably their 10,000 hours doing one thing. They've heard music on a macro level for so long that it's very easy for that person to offer guidance. Whereas if I were to sit there by myself in my home studio and work on a project, I might get lost in the minutia of things, or I might miss something, or I might not have the access to that information that could help me get over a hump. So that's definitely another con, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if people are willing to grind it out, and like I know I've mastered albums for these guys. It's been like almost 2 years. These two guys doing an instrumental like rock album that was sort of a passion project of theirs.
Uh-huh.
And I had been talking to them for like a year, and they were sending me tracks and just asking my opinion. What do you think of this? What can we do differently? And I tell them what I think, and if it worked out, then they're great. And eventually they finished it up, and it was really cool. It was like a really, really good body of work.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but these two guys like did it at home and nitpicked everything, but they learned along the way. They basically taught themselves a whole lot about production and engineering and layering and how things go together. It's a really like complex, layered like guitar instrumental album. So,
and you were charging them by the hour, right? Every time they ask you for questions.
Occasionally, yeah. Sometimes no. Sometimes I don't. But there were times they would set up sessions to come in.
Yeah.
They'd get their other mixes to a point, and they'd come in, which I thought was a really intelligent use of time. To be honest with you, they wanted to do the bulk of the work themselves, but they would pay me for like 4 hours or so, and they'd come in and we'd sit and like pour over their stuff, and I'd take notes and give them notes and say, this is what I think you should do here, this is what I'm hearing here that could be different.
Yeah.
And they'd go home and they'd do that for like 6 months and then come back and do it again.
Wow, so that's an interesting way to approach recording a record. They were literally trying to do it themselves, but they also wanted to gain the knowledge along the way. And they were willing to pay you to help them with that. Like, not just, the typical, hey, we're going to come in, record a record, you do it all, and then we walk out with a finished record. They actually came in and tried to extract knowledge from you, and then applied what you were telling them, applied it themselves, so they kind of learned how to do it. Wow, that's an interesting way to record. It might take a while, but you gain, like you said, you gain that knowledge, though. Yeah, it did. And I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun for me, and it was fun to watch the thing come together. But by the time it was done, I'd almost forgotten about it. It was so long. And they popped up and said, "Hey, we want you to master our album, and we want to come sit and watch you do it."
Wow.
So that's how they learned about mastering, which that's a newer skill for me. That's something I'm still really getting used to doing, but as a separate thing. But so they came in and we mastered their record, and they sat and they asked questions, and it was a lot of fun, man. It was a good collaborative thing, and they learned a lot from it. They got to say they pretty much did most of it themselves.
Wow.
There was a big pride for them,
And when they came in, I mean, did they give you a heads up before? They were like, hey, we want you to come in, or we're going to come in there and, kind of be flies on the wall, but we're going to ask you questions, because some producers and some engineers, while you're mixing and stuff, you just don't like to be talked to, like you just want to do your thing. But they kind of gave you a heads up and said, hey, do you mind if we ask you questions while you're doing your thing? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I knew ahead of time that they were going to do that. Okay.
Sometimes I'll divert it if I don't. Sometimes I'll bring it up because I'm one of the. There's a certain period of time where I want to be alone, and then after a point, I get to a point, I'm fine with people showing up and sitting there because it's distracting for me.
Yeah.
not to be rude, it's not like I'm trying to get anything over on everyone. I want to get sucked into the mix and focus on it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, a lot of that stuff can be really boring. The minutia of it, the initial like hour or two of mixing a song, can be really boring for a lot of people.
Yeah, just a lot of setup and a lot of just getting things ready. Let's talk a little bit about the technology side for recording. Okay. What advice would you have for someone who is ready to invest in gear? Like what would you suggest that they purchase or buy or look into technology wise, bare minimum? Like to start off.
Bare minimum. I think you need good instrument and a good front end and good monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
So interface wise, with digital technology, we've got the analog to digital conversion. So you're gonna need some way to interface your microphones and your gear with your computer. But most even more moderate, affordable interfaces nowadays have good enough conversion that will not make a huge difference to somebody starting out.
Right.
What will make a huge difference, I think, is, again, it depends on what you want to do. If you need to set up and record your whole band, then you just got to get what you can get. So you get interfaces that have like 8 channels of preamps themselves, and then invest in some good microphones, right? So you just start at the beginning, I think. So if you get quality microphones going into a decent interface, then you can start. You can do what you need to do, because really, like the biggest gains in the quality of a recording are the earlier parts of the chain. Like if your instruments are set up and they sound good, then that's going to make a huge difference over whether you have maybe a crappy drum kit taking it into a really nice studio. If the drum kit doesn't sound good, that doesn't sound good, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to polish a turd. That kind of
exactly. Yeah. So I think if people have good chops and good gear, then they don't have to have the best stuff right off the bat. So, but good microphones. And from there, I'd invest in like a couple of good channels of preamps, outboard preamps, and good monitoring. That's it. If it's headphones, like quality headphones. If you're monitoring headphones, there are plugins now that people can actually flatten out the frequency response of their headphones for mixing, so it's a little more balanced. Or just whatever like good small monitors for your room that you can get your hands on. And then learn the biggest benefit really is to learn how to treat the space you're in.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Expand on that a little bit. Like what do you mean by that?
Oh man, well, if you're at home, you're probably recording in your garage or your bedroom. Not all of us get to have custom-made jam rooms attached to the side of our house.
Yeah,
so,
I'm in debt.
Yeah, there are those guys
right now,
too, right?
It's cool.
So the space that you're in is imperfect. It's not designed for recording. The reason big studios are so expensive to build are because the spaces are designed to allow sound to react a certain way and to be somewhat more controllable. We don't have that when you walk into a bedroom or a garage. You're dealing with hard flat surfaces. Every sound you make in there is going to reflect in 3 dimensions around the room. And so we need to be able to control that a little bit to keep things from sounding too washy or too boxy. So there's a lot of resources online. People can just find ways to throw up some kind of absorption around the walls. And you can build some pretty hefty, get fiberglass and build like hefty bass straps in the corners and keep low end frequencies from building up. And there's a lot of resources for that, but treating the room will go a long way.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of people who do try to record at home, that's maybe one of the things the last things they think about. I think they think more about, oh man, I got to get this equipment. I got to get this awesome microphone. I got to get this awesome guitar and this great amp. And that's like their first priority. But what you're bringing up is priceless, man. I mean, like you're saying, go into the room, go into your room that you're looking to record in and start there, right? Like see what you can do with the room. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, man, because you can get away with lower quality gear if the room is not going to interfere with the signal that's going into the microphone. Bonus, you're good to go.
Yeah,
it's a big help. So and it really impresses me sometimes when if I run into people who do recording. They record stuff at home, and they record their guitar tracks at home or whatever. And I'm amazed, first of all, like how many people actually do it.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of people you meet that are like, yeah, man, I play guitar a little and I try to record my stuff at home. It's like, wow, everybody does.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting. And you know, dialing in your room space is something that I think we all need to remember. Let's talk about how often should you invest in new equipment. I mean, like, you know, obviously technology changes so fast. We're talking like, when do you upgrade Pro Tools? When do you buy that new microphone that came out? Or do you not have to?
Well, you don't have to per se. I know plenty of high-level guys who are on older versions of Pro Tools because they want stability. But these are guys that are also like cranking out they're recording a lot of projects, and all these projects have some skin in the game. So, if their system goes down, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But putting that concept aside, I think just as you need it, or whenever you can. I mean, if you got the funds and you got the money and you see something you like, and that's awesome to buy new gear. But if it's something where you have to be really smart as an investment or business-wise, then upgrade when you can. And I think when you have a need for it. And when I first started out, I wanted everything. It's like, oh, if I only had this thing, this would be awesome. And I really wish I had a pair of these because I could get these results. And I sort of grew out of that. I just kind of grew out of that and I would wait until I had a real need for something and go, okay, all right, I think, I have this job that I need a tool for this job. That's how I like buying tools at home. Like all of a sudden you want to you're gonna like put hardwood floors in your house and you need to redo your baseboards. So like, oh, I don't own a miter saw, I might as well go buy one.
Right.
It's kind of the approach that I have. And so as far as the software, that's really just a matter of obsolescence. I moved to Pro Tools 10 because I thought was a much cooler, better version than 7 or 8, whatever I had been using. And then I ran that for a long time, man, and the system was rock solid. But now we're getting into these situations where most of the plug-in manufacturers that I use are changing to like 32-bit and 64-bit formats and AAX versions, and they're just making all of my previous operating system became obsolete, and the Mac Pro that I ran it on became obsolete. So I wound up having to upgrade my whole system just to keep in the loop.
And do you have to shut down business for that amount of time? I mean, just say, hey, today is going to be an upgrade day. Nobody's coming into the studio. I mean, how does that work? Because it's so reliant on the technology.
Well, I kept the old system running. I just did as smooth a changeover as I could. So yeah, I just had an off day where I wasn't very busy, and it took some timing though, because I'm always working on something, even if it's like one or two things. There's always something going on that I'm like, I don't really feel comfortable like changing software and changing my computer around in the middle of these projects.
Yeah. So
I had to kind of wait for a time when I could sort of call halts, and then we just did it smart. Just bought the new machine and swapped it all over, and it did it in a way that if it didn't work, I could put it all back in the old machine and keep running.
Yeah.
But so it went pretty smooth. But yeah, that's something that people don't think to build in when you're recording on your own, is you're the guy that's taking care of all this crap. So
right.
When there are updates to do, you got to sit for that. You sit all night and do the updates and download stuff. And man, some software packages are so huge. So it's a whole other part of the job is just keeping your stuff running and upgraded.
Let me just ask you a couple more questions here. So for you personally, what do you look at yourself as? Because you play guitar, obviously. Do you consider more of yourself like an engineer first, sound like a recording engineer first, and then a musician, or a musician first and then the other way around? Like what do you see yourself as?
At this point, definitely engineer first, because that's primarily what I do. I actually play with other people very rarely, and so as far as I don't have a whole lot of time to sit around and play for improvement.
Right.
I just blink around still, unless something comes up. But so definitely engineer first. But the musician part of it is always in play, because when working on the right projects, I get to get that part of my brain working as well.
Yeah.
So it's always there. It's always turned on, and it always, I think, helps the projects that I'm working on.
Yeah. And I've for those of you listening out there on the podcast, I mean, I've worked with Josh before, and he is on point, whether it's, something technical, something musical. So you just do a killer job on that, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Last question here because I could seriously talk to you all day about this. And by the way, I'm gonna have to have you on the podcast again some other time, just to pick your brain.
Oh, please, man, I'd love to.
Yeah. So what do you see, like, the music business and the recording industry, or what we call it today? Where do you see it going in like the next 5 to 10 years? And what does that mean for artists, like musicians, like little guys out there? Where do you see it going right now?
Oh, man. Dude, that's such a big question.
Yeah.
There's
Sorry
so much,
to throw that
and
at
there's
you.
so much I don't know. No, it's fine. It's a great topic of conversation. That's like a whole other hour's worth of work.
Oh, I know.
No, in the short, there's so much I don't know about it as well, because again, it's sort of generationally.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you're doing, it blows me away. 'Cause you've always got another avenue of like creating content and taking what you know how to do and adapting it to an online world, and that's really what it comes down to.
Right.
So
right.
the systems of like, writing songs and performing them and hoping somebody's going to notice enough to give you money to record them and then send you out on the road like that, those things don't really work the same way anymore. For some bands it might, but for the majority, I don't think it will. So I think the creating content, having to be good with social media and marketing, is the future. But the upside of that is that people can really kind of have a career in their own hands. What I love about what you do, and especially like the Songwriter's Planner, it's like what you've done for the last probably 4 or 5 years is geared towards somebody who is not going to be out there touring all year long, but can play music and is good enough to have like a consistent career with different income streams, doing different things. And I think that really is like an attainable goal for most musicians. If you give up sort of the dream of like being this huge rock star and understand that, well, we can create and we can sell and we can serve and we can have a good life doing this. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, and man, that just nails it on the head for me. I mean, I've always felt like that. There's such a big generation of musicians out there that can still. You literally have your destiny in your hands by doing things on your own, and you don't have to be the big rock star that goes on tour and everything like that. There are a million ways to create income for yourself and to position yourself so that you can make money and do music at the same time. I mean, there's just so many ways, and the Songwriter's Planner is just a little small aspect of that. I mean, it's just there's just so many avenues. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, brother. Thank you.
No problem. I think it's a great product, and I think it's geared really well towards people that, their daily life is like, okay, this is what I'm choosing to do, as my career or part of my career, and this is a tool that's really going to help me, or I would say, organize and work towards that.
Thanks, man.
I'm not that guy, so I don't,
You are very organized. You have a million things going on, so you already know how to do your thing.
Yeah. But I have a lot of guys. I mean, I have a lot of musicians come through, and they're just players, man, and they play all around town. They play with a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
Some have original projects on their own, and then they also do cover bands, and they play in casinos, and they are just branched out. And like their whole life is music. And people say, well, I want my life to be music, and in their head it's being on the bus and going to the venue and like jamming out and girls and parties and all this stuff. Well, I see guys whose life is music, and it's literally what they do from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, and they do very well at it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I know we probably know the same guys that do that, and they stay busy and they make a living at it, or even if they're not doing music full time, they do it on the side, and they're still pretty successful.
Yeah.
So
and even meeting like their idea of success, whatever that is different for everybody.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. Josh, I seriously am going to have you on the podcast again sometime
soon. Well, thank you.
And for everybody out there, this is Josh. Now it's sersoundworks.com. Definitely go check out the website. And if you're here in Arizona, look into recording there because they are amazing. And
Thank you.
if you need a rehearsal space, definitely look in them as well. You guys do a great job, so thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. We'll have to hang soon.
Definitely, man. Hang on the line for a second here. I'm just going to sign off. Thank you, people, for
Okay.
checking out this podcast. Again, check out the Songwriter's Planner when you get a chance, songwritersplanner.com. And we just want to thank Josh again. And hopefully you guys will see you around on the next podcast. Peace and love.